Why, hello, Doodle Crew followers, and welcome to something totally different. Exciting. So, for the next few weeks, we are going to be releasing different episodes of artist interviews. So today, I am sitting down and I am talking to Geoff Munn. Hi, Geoff. Thanks for sitting down with me.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. So, we'll start with, how did we meet, Geoff? Let's jump right into that.
I believe, and I actually went in my Wayback Machine today to see, I believe you and I met in October of 2012 at the very last HeroBot Con that was at the old Southside High School that was the YMCA in Elmira.
Yes, I think you're right. I forgot we did one there.
We were seated right next to each other, and that was actually like my second con ever, I think, and my first one in my hometown. So that was a lot of fun to do.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, you've definitely been a staple and someone I always look forward to seeing at shows.
Yeah.
So that's always a good time. I think it's funny because as you, the viewers, are going to see in many of these interviews, a lot of us know each other from roundabout ways, but one of those funny ways and funny connections that we have is the Art Institute of Pittsburgh. So a lovely art college that no longer exists in Pennsylvania. But now I'm going to ask everybody, Geoff, are you an Art Institute of Pittsburgh alumni?
I am 2 times over, actually. So I went in 1997 to 1999 and graduated with a dual degree, computer animation and multimedia. And then as soon as I left and that was the old Art Institute that was on Pennsylvania Avenue, I think is where it was. And as soon as I left there, about 1 quarter later, they opened up the newer school that was on Boulevard of the Allies. And then they started doing bachelor's degrees, because at the time that I was enrolled, they didn't do bachelor's degrees at all. It was all associate degrees. Everybody went for 2 straight years, and then you graduated and you're out of there. And then so I waited a few years to see if I could get any traction with my degree, which I couldn't. And I was like, you know what, I'll just go back and I'll get my bachelor's degree and see that. I'm a pretty strong believer that the first 2 years of your college experience is really kind of like a social experiment more than anything else.
I completely.
You're kind of getting your footing as to who you are as an adult more than anything else. So not that I didn't get a good education my first 2 years, because I got a fairly good one. I don't feel that I did enough for myself to warrant me getting into a professional career, really. So I went back for my bachelor's degree, and I got that in media arts and animation in 2005. So from 2003 to 2005, I went back and got that degree. And I know that I was way more focused. I got a much better education. I learned a lot more during that time. So I really feel that, anybody who's coming straight out of high school and going right into college, I think your first 2 years is kind of just figuring out a lot of life and a lot of who you are and a lot of stuff like that. And you're getting your base education to build off of to really get to where you need to go for a career. And you kind of mature more as a person anyway. Like you're such a kid coming out of high school. You don't feel like it because you've gone, you're like, yeah, I've graduated and technically I'm an adult now and I can go live on my own and this is what I can do. But you're still, oh my gosh, you're still such a kid and you know nothing.
Yeah. No, it's so well said. And that was definitely something I realized and I can look back on now.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it then. Like I took tons of art all through high school, years before. Like I had been doing art forever, but there's something very different about doing art in a college setting. And especially the thing that attracted me to our school was the idea that they were kind of working to get you set up so you could go to work for a company. It was different than some of the fine art schools I looked at. And so I liked that. Like that was a whole thing. But I was also, again, I lacked the maturity needed to really understand what that meant as an adult. I agree with you completely. And I actually didn't know that they hadn't offered bachelor's degrees previous to that point. So that's really
interesting. No, they weren't an accredited university or anything. They were just they were an art school. I mean, they were a trade school. So you were going there to learn a trade and and that was it. And they gave, they were given associate's degrees. And then once they moved the buildings, they really kind of refocused into this accredited university type thing. And that's why a lot of the teachers there started to have to get their master's degrees, because they didn't have those either. And they just had the work experience. Like guys like Jim Allen, who was a 2D animation student, like worked on like Evil Dead and stuff like that. And like, he didn't want to get his master's. He was later in life anyway, like he was in his 60s when he was teaching us. So like by the time they wanted him to get a master's, he's like, why? Yeah. So they ended up telling him he had to leave. Like you lost like such a huge asset just because you're forcing your teachers to have a master's degree. You can't like take their life's work and be like, you know what you're doing. You're a master at your craft. You don't really have to have this piece of paper that says that somebody else taught you something. Like, you learned it in the trenches. You are one of the innovators of the field. We're going to lose you because of this little technicality.
Yeah. But I feel like as an innovator in the field, like, yeah, sorry. They're like, wait, I literally pioneered this stuff and there's not a place for me. Yeah, I think that, and being objective of our school, I think that was where it really suffered, was when the business and admin side of it got too involved. Because I will stand up for so many of the instructors that we had there. They were great. And it had
absolutely.
To do with them. And that's such a bummer, because I loved what I learned from them, but the whole second half, the important part for then going into the real world, I felt like they really let us down.
Yeah, and even to the point where it's funny, because the business side did get in the way, but at the same time they taught us nothing about business either. Like I had one class that was supposed to do that, but basically it was just like, here, you're in a team, you're going to get a project done in this 11-week period of 12 weeks. I can't remember how long our quarters were. You've got this many weeks to get this done, and that's it. And they don't teach you like budget. They don't teach you like all this other stuff, like how to run anything or how to invoice things or stuff like that. That's stuff that I had to learn by myself by doing it. And it was like, I have to do, like, luckily now we have so many resources on the internet where you can be like, oh, this place will tell you how to do invoicing. This will tell you how to do pricing. This will tell you how to do, balance your books and stuff like that. And like, that's stuff that you should have learned in school to prepare you for what you're going to do, especially now when we've got all these small studios. Like myself, I consider myself a small studio, and it's just me. But since I own a lot of the work that I do, it's something that I really could have used as an education beforehand, but it just had to get it in the field.
Yeah, no, and you make a great point with the way that we are able to find information now. Like, if I have an artist who opens up on Twitter and is like, hey, does anybody have any questions about being a professional artist? I could ask them about invoicing. That wasn't something I knew how to do in the early 2000s. Like, I didn't feel comfortable. And two, you couldn't just go to YouTube and be like, how do I file taxes as a self-employed person? Like, so yes, the being out there is incredible. But like you said, I am sure it wasn't until my second to last quarter. So I'm almost ready to graduate. And I finally took like the professional development class where like, here's how you do a resume. I'm like, this feels like something we should have covered sooner than this point.
And that was when I got my associate's degree, that was your very last class. Like, that was your reel building class. Like, you had a class that was dedicated to basically putting together your demo reel and getting your resume done and getting your flatwork portfolio together. So, and that class was so hands off, it wasn't even funny. Like, the teachers was basically like just there to be like, you doing it? Okay, great. And that was 4 hours of kids basically just messing around. Like, you've got 19, 20-year-old kids like just being like, oh, let's throw some stuff together and this will be what it is. And at that time, we also only had one editing suite with 5 computers to put together your reel that you had to put on VHS. Like, we didn't do CDs, we didn't do DVDs, we didn't deliver them digitally, we didn't put them on YouTube. Wasn't a thing.
No.
So we had 5 computers, 3 of which were hooked up to these big giant VHS machines. So it took hours to render onto one VHS, and then you had to do copies. So you just had to do, you put your master in, and then you put a blank cassette in, and then you record it over. So you had to put your name down and rent your machine for X amount of hours to just sit there and hit a button and let it go, and then hit a button and let it go. And you had to have 5 copies of your reel at graduation. My first reel that I made, I didn't realize the audio didn't copy over.
No.
So when I turned it in, there was no audio. So I didn't think I thought I was going to fail the class, because your reel was all you got a grade on.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, I'm going to fail this class. I'm going to have to take a whole quarter just for this class again. And then my teacher came and found me one night that I was still, like, I had a night class, and she came and found me. She goes, don't worry, you're going to graduate, but your reel has no audio to it. We need you to resplice it so we can get you all set. That was like 2 days before graduation. I was like, oh, thank God. Because I was literally went down to my guidance counselor and went, I have to sign up for classes again next quarter, because I'm not gonna pass my real class. He's like, really? I was like, I just don't think I'm going to.
Oh my gosh.
But luckily I did luckily, and everything's fine now. But back then I was panicking, so a 20-year-old trying to finish school technically on time.
Yeah, and I know also for me, like, the build up to it, the stress of it, like, so much pressure putting on, like, I don't think I was aware that it's okay if your reel changes. It's okay if you update your
Oh my gosh.
Like
you have to. It's a must, really. Yeah.
Like, logically it makes sense, but in that moment it was like, if I don't have the most perfect things right now as a 20-year-old graduating, I have no hope. And like you said, you're giving me flashbacks to all those times where you'd hit render on something, and then you just have to wait and see what's going to happen in the next 2 hours, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. Like, I'm having all of the flashbacks to, like, DVDs burning incorrectly, and you're like up to the wire on when you have to turn it in.
Yeah, I had been up from finishing my reel, like, just rendering 3D Max scenes out. Like, I had some 2D stuff, like walk cycles and stuff, because that's all they really teach you in the 2D classes. And then, the 3D stuff, I kind of had to come up, we had to do a commercial, so I had some stuff from that. And then I had another thing that I did on my own, and just waiting for that so many seconds of animation to render through Max on a an ancient computer by nowadays standards. I had been up for 48 hours straight, I think, like, just trying to finish my reel. And my roommate's name was also Geoff. So anytime we'd answer the phone, when the whole time we lived together, it's like, is Geoff there? Which one? Right. So I've been up for 48 hours. He came home from work and he basically passed out on our living room floor, because we were not the best at sleeping. Anyway, so we get a knock on the door, and I'm like, who is coming to the door? So I go and I answer it, and there's these 2 girls there, and I have never seen them before in my entire lives. One of them turns out to be my now wife. They're like, is Geoff there? And I go, which one? Clearly not me, idiot, that answered the door. They're not here for you. They're like, I don't know his last name. He works at Kohl's. I was like, oh, he's passed out on the floor right there. They're like, can we wake him up? I go, I don't care. And I just walked back to my computer and sat down. That is the first time I met my wife.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
True story.
But it's just that it makes perfect sense, because that's what you're bringing. This is a muscle memory thing I could do.
It was an automatic. Yeah. They're like, is Geoff there? Which one? Is it Geoff or is it Jeff?
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Oh, I love it. So we kind of touched on this one a little bit, but it sounds like art is pretty much your primary career or job. But
yes.
How do you title yourself for what you do?
If people ask me, what do you do? I'm a freelance illustrator animator. For people who are in the field, I'll say I'm a cartoonist sometimes, depending on where I'm at and what I'm doing. For the majority of what I'm doing right now, I'm doing a lot of illustration work freelance wise. So like all my clients right now are illustration clients, I think. Trying to think of all my gigs that I'm kind of wrapping up this week, which is I'm kind of thankful for as well.
Yes.
But yeah, as professionally on my website and on my resume, it says freelance illustrator, animator, graphic designer. Because I mean, and I tell people, I do everything. Like, so if anybody asks, well, can you do graphic design? Yes, I can. Can you do illustration? Yes, I can. Can you do animation? Yes, I can. Motion graphics? Yes. Web design? Yes, but it's been a long time. It's just not my primary, thing that I do. Video editing, sure, I can do that because technically I do that anyway with animation and stuff like that. Yeah, so logo design, yeah, it's part of graphic design in my opinion.
Yeah.
I've done mobile app design and animation. I've done video game stuff. I've done board game stuff. I've done card game stuff. I've done, like I said, you kind of name it, and the answer is probably yes. So, but yeah, officially freelance illustrator animator. It's the quickest, most all-encompassing thing that I can kind of say.
No, and that makes sense. And I think it's funny because exactly what you said, like people will ask you and you have that short answer because so much of the time, if they're interested in getting art, the next question is going to be, hey, can you do insert X thing here? So, getting that out of the way, be like, yep, because you're going to ask me. And I have a lot of people who have asked me to design tattoos. And I was like, I mean, I don't say that because I don't do it. Can I physically do it? Yeah. But also, tattoo artists are amazing in their own right. You should work with one of them because that's what they do.
Yes. It's funny. I was just going to say the only no I give them is that. Like, they'll be like, oh, you draw. Can you draw my tattoo? No, I can't. Well, why not? Because it's a completely different animal. And honestly, it really is. Like, I have a tattoo. I didn't design it. I knew what I wanted. I found a guy who does great artwork. And I was like, hey, this is what I want. I want to see what you do with it. Because you're the professional tattoo artist. I'm not. Like, you have to fit the contour of the area it's going to go into. You have to do this, design that looks nice also, that could just look nice, as itself. So like that's just, and I have done a couple. One that I didn't know was going to be a tattoo. I had just done a tiki mask design. My friend's like, hey, check it out. He has it on his leg now. I was like, oh, nice. And then I had another guy say, I want you to design my tattoo. And I'm like, okay, cool. What do you want? And I figured what it was going to be, because I said, take this to your artist and have him do what he does with it. And so I basically gave them, it was a final piece, but it was more or less like, hey, this is what you say you want. You can have it done by an artist. And I figured he would take, the tattoo artist would be like, oh, cool, let me see what I can do with this. But the tattoo artist literally took what I did and put it on the guy's arm. Like, I'm like, okay. I mean, it looks, he's happy with it. So great. But at the same time, like, it's not, in my opinion, I thought the artist would have done a little bit like with the edging, like it's like a warrior angel coming out and like these demons coming out of this fire pit thing. And I thought maybe he would do like blend it into the arm more at the bottom and all this other stuff. He just like literally took what I did, put it on the guy's arm. And I was just like, I mean, if you're happy with it, you're happy with it. And that's great.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's an interesting thing. So I wonder, like you said, with that guy taking the tiki design, like if someone else found a piece of your artwork that they really liked and just took that, like, how would you feel about having somebody who was just like, oh, I really like this like pinup pose that you did, and I've got it on my shoulder blade now. Like,
if I don't know you, please ask. But this is a good friend of mine, and he's just like really liked it, and it's not a problem whatsoever. Like, it's actually, it's very flattering. But if I don't know you personally, and you're like, hey, I found this on the internet. I know you did it, and now it's on me. I'm like, oh, it would have been great if you asked me if it was okay to do that. But, I mean, it is what it is at that point.
Yeah. But,
yeah, I mean, technically, it's great. Most likely I'd be like, sure, go for it. And I would also give the same advice of, if it's going to be like a major piece, it's not going to be just like a small fill piece.
Right.
Have your tattoo artist put their spin on it. Unless you want it exactly the way you see it, I would suggest have your tattoo artist be like, oh, that's cool. Let me see what I can do with it. And they're artists too. Like,
Absolutely.
I've heard some people who do tattoos be like, oh, it's mostly just tracing. Like, we just put stuff down on the arm and we just have to trace it. I'm like, no, first of all, it's not. You're working on a living, breathing, moving
Yeah.
piece of canvas. Like, it's not a piece of paper that I can like just draw on
or erase from.
Right. Well, right. Yeah. And it's also like, but the person feels and the person moves, and the whole, the canvas as a whole just moves when you touch it and push on it and stuff. It's like, it's a spongy, pushy, like, it's not that easy, and you're using a needle. So it's like, most good tattoo artists are going to want to put their own spin on something anyway. They're going to want to, because they're artists as well, and they want to draw, and they want to get out their creative energy as well. They don't want to just sit down and, okay, well, let's just do these lines that somebody else already did.
Yeah, no, and it's exactly what I was thinking with when I'm creating a piece of artwork, I'm creating it to be on a flat surface, whether it's on a computer or on an actual print. I am not designing it to be on like a cylindrical surface. And, it's one of those, I watch a ton of tattoo shows because I'm fascinated by it.
Right.
It's magic to me because it's not something that I do. And the amount of care, like, okay, so this is the curve of this body. Like, I understand that with line of motion when I was animating or when I'm doing comics, but not when it comes to how I would place something on a person's shoulder. Like, it's just
Yep, something that and the muscles underneath the thing move as well. So you want it to like not look stupid when someone bends their arm or rotates their arm. You want the whole thing. It's a crazy, complicated art style that those guys in women and everybody that does them, they blow my mind. Like, not anybody can just slap ink down on somebody's arm or leg or wherever.
Yeah, no, exactly. Oh, that's so cool. So I will say this kind of two-parter. So we'll start with, how long have you been making art? I'm assuming it's a bit.
Since birth. I mean, everybody. And I think Scotty Young said this first, and I could be wrong. He may have lifted it from somebody else, but it's like, artists are the kids who never stop drawing. So like, all kids draw, and then at some point, most of them stop. They move on to something else, or they get too frustrated that what they're doing isn't perfect, which we all do as artists. But at the same time, an artist knows that you need to grow, and nothing, like, I really kind of go by finished is better than perfect right now. It's kind of a motto that I go by, especially when it comes to comics and stuff, because I still have a lot to learn when it comes to the comic page and making everything look really good. And it's better to finish it and move along and grow as you're doing it than to be like, well, this isn't perfect, I have to redo this. Then you're stuck on the same page over and over and over again, or the same panel over and over again. So, but yeah, I think some kids are just like, they get frustrated with it. They're like, I can do this better, so I'm just going to do this now, and put the pencils and everything aside, and they stop doing it. But artists, we continue, and we struggle, and we have really bad days, and we have some good days, and some good art we look at 2 days later and we hate it, and some good art we can still look at and be like, that's not bad, especially for where I was at that time. But
yeah, that's a fun thing is having those moments. Like, I think I found a folder that had 2014 art in it, and I was like, hey, you were drawing a lot that summer and you hit some good ones. Like,
yeah,
this is still wrong, but I was like, no, that was pretty okay.
I still have a lot of old sketchbooks and stuff that I look through every once in a while. They're in my flat file, and I'll pull them out and I'll look through them. I'll be like, wow, I don't know what I was thinking. Like, how did I get into art school? It was because our art institute didn't require a portfolio. That's why. But then I see stuff when I was in school the second time, and I'm like, I was clearly more focused, and I was clearly around people who, and I feed off of other people, other creatives. So like, that's the toughest thing about being a freelancer on your own, is you're not around other creatives that much. So like, I feed off that, and I could tell when I was, in those books that I filled up, like, oh, I was firing on all cylinders for that time. Like the arts, I would never draw that way again, but I could tell that I was in the zone.
Yep.
And then I have some sketchbooks where half of them are garbage and half of them aren't, or some days you had good days and some days you didn't. But just like, there's that I can't remember. I got off track here. Can't remember what we're talking about. But
No,
there's good days, there's bad days, and you just have to kind of push through it.
Yeah. No, I think it's a specific insanity to being an artist, but also, and I've tried to explain it to people before, in that I have done other things in my life. I've not always been a professional artist, but there's never been a time where I haven't wanted to be doing art.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the thing. Like, I could walk away from certain parts and do other jobs because that was what was necessary at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't happy because I wasn't doing art. So
right. I was very fortunate. Like between my school stints, I did. I was a youth counselor at a basically like a very minimum security juvenile detention center, and so I was very lucky where they kind of worked with my strengths. So during summer school, because I started in the residential units where the kids just kind of lived and ate and stayed and stuff like that. And eventually I moved into the education unit. So I worked Monday through Friday, school hours and stuff like that. So that was transportation. So I would take some of the kids down to the local high school for a couple classes and then bring them up, or any of the kids that went to the local high school that weren't allowed to go there anymore had to come to our unit. And then during the summers, I was allowed to teach art. So I got to be like an art teacher. And then the kids knew that I drew. So they would ask me to draw things for them, and it was great. And I've made lifelong friends that I worked with there and stuff like that. So I was very fortunate, and I was not working in the art field, but they worked to my strengths, or I was able to use my skills to help do the job that I was doing already. So
yeah, and what a great thing for those kids too, to have that,
right.
And it just something different. And I mean, we could do a whole hour on arts and education and all.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So in talking about that, obviously that is not the same job that you're doing now. So how did you kind of get into the niche that you have, either in style or in being a freelance artist?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of moved. So my career was kind of fluid. So I came out of the art institute the second time I started working in video games. And when I told my counselor what I wanted to do, video games was bottom of the list, because during that time it was really bad crunch times, and that was when studios were abusing their employees and stuff. I was lucky enough to get into a video game company that was run by a woman, and she knew her stuff, and she had work-life balance down. Like, she told us, if we're in crunch and you're working more than 10 hours, go home. You're not helping the project. Don't stay here for longer than that. So I had a really good thing there. The only problem was we were working on like third-party games. So I got to work on some cool stuff, like from Disney and from Cartoon Network and Marvel and stuff like that. So technically, I was working on some really cool properties, but at the same time, it just wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to work in just animation. Like, I wanted to work in TV animation specifically. And then a job opened up down here in Pittsburgh at an invention company for an animation position, a 2D animation position, specifically Flash animator. I took the tests and I got the job, and I came down here and I worked there for about 3 years until the division dissolved. We were technically R&D. The company was trying to make an entertainment company. The CEO didn't know what he's doing and thought he did. So we lost, some of our best guys from the team, and then it was down to just two of us. And then they were like, well, why do we have a department anyway? So they dissolved it. And I was like, okay. And at the time I had been freelancing for, just on the side for some extra cash. And I was like, okay, this area is flooded with, because Art Institute was still here. Graduates were coming out every 12 weeks. People couldn't afford to move out of this area. So Pittsburgh was flooded with talent and people that could do it, and not enough jobs. So I was like, okay, I'm going to freelance. I'm going to see what I can do. My wife at the time was working for a local university full time. So we she had full-time job, and then I picked up quite a bit of freelance work for the first couple of years, and I was like, oh, this is pretty awesome. This is going to work pretty well. And I just think that I leaned on my strengths, which were, I've talked about it on a different stream that we had before. I kind of had an epiphany. I was like, okay, well, I draw cartoony stuff. Why am I trying to draw super muscular, realistic, comic book style stuff? Lean into what you've got. So I started to do, much more cartoony stuff, and that's when I got hired to do. I got hired initially as an animator on a math game, and after about 2 or 3 weeks of working on it, they're like, "You want to be our assistant art director? Because you're basically doing it anyway." I was like, "Okay." And after a couple months later, they're like, "You want to be our art director? Because our current art director's out. He's not doing anything, and you're doing all the work." I was like, "Okay." So for a year and a half, I went from that to being the art director for this company for, the game that we worked on. And I just kind of like leaned into everything from there. I was like, okay, well, this is my strength. Or if, times got tough where I didn't have something coming in, I was like, okay, well, I have to take anything I can get, and I'll just do these jobs, and because I can, and it's not my style, but I can do it. And so I've ended up just working for a lot of startup companies, which Pittsburgh's really good with, because we're kind of a technological hub now. And we have stuff like Startup Weekend every so many weeks or so many months they do that. There's the Alpha Lab, which brings in, if you have an idea for a small company, they will fund you and you can build whatever you're building. Half the time those guys need some kind of graphic designer or one company was another educational app that was doing animation. So I got hired to do some work for them. And then I make connections from there, and I keep some of those connections. Ended up being the art director for another video game company here in town that only lasted for one project because the project manager kind of botched getting another project. All of us were like, hey, so this is starting to ramp down. What's next? And he's like, oh, I've got stuff lined up. And then like the very next day, he's like, I kind of can't fund you guys anymore. And we're like, we don't work for free. Yeah. So we'll see you later. But from there, I've met, I've met 2 programmers that I've worked with several times since. And so you kind of make these connections and you network, and you kind of keep the good, even from, tough situations. Like working for the invention company was overall a terrible experience. And anybody who tells me they're going to work there, I'll say, run away. But I've made some very good connections from there, from guys that I've worked with more since then on freelance stuff, or, we keep in contact, every so many months. We'll be like, hey, how you doing? You're all the way out in San Francisco. How you doing? You're in Ohio now. How are you doing? And, stuff like that. And, we keep each other in the loop. We send, you have friends that are like, hey, I found this job you'd probably be good for. Why don't you apply for it? And you do this, do that. So a lot of it is networking and making friends and just having the skills and doing what you do and doing it well. And then, people know that they can rely on you to deliver. And so you kind of make a name for yourself and build from there.
No, I think what you said is exactly on point, and especially with the networking. And I know for so many years it was the most frustrating answer to hear, and I understand why people say it, because it is the truth. Like, to network with people, and exactly like you said, it doesn't have to be like I worked at the best studio with the best coworkers. Like, I could have worked a bad job, but I met some cool people, or I met some other people who knew other people, and I proved to them that I was worthwhile as an artist and a good person you could count on. So now they will call me. And I'll admit, behind the curtain a little bit, it was part of the reason why I started Doodle Crew, is because I have all of these incredible artists who I know. And like you said earlier, we work alone. We were already working from home. Then we were in a pandemic, so it was even working at home. And I was like, I miss the feel of being in a studio with my art friends. I miss being able to just feed off of that energy and have it, and you need it. And it is nothing against my non-art friends. Like, they're awesome, but there's something different about being around a group of people who are just excited to create. And again, that shared insanity.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like we're trying to capture that con energy. Cause like, I know you do a lot more cons than I do. Like I do, basically I only do the Alum convention anymore because the stuff here in Pittsburgh kind of got to the point where it wasn't worthwhile for me to do. It's such a weird crowd down here, at least in
the weirdest
for my style at the very least. Like it's just,
I don't think it's
I
just
could have
it's everything because all the shows I do, Pittsburgh is the weirdest every year. So.
Yeah, it's a very hit or miss sometimes. Like that, at the Pittsburgh convention when they actually had a Pittsburgh Comic Con, I started to gain traction the more I did it, and then the last time I did very, very well. And I was like, okay, great. And they're like, okay, we're done. Wizards buying us. We're like, oh, well, then I'm done because I'm not spending $500 on a booth for 2 days, and then you guys don't draw the crowd anyway because you get wrestlers in here, and then that's it. Steel City Con turned into that. It's just all celebrities now. Like if you look at their banner now, it's like they make it longer and longer and longer with these tiny little heads. We have all these people from these 80s movies that you haven't seen forever, but you'd love to get your picture with.
And it's like 4 times a year.
Yeah, and he has a contract with the convention center in Monroeville so that if he can't, no comic convention or pop culture convention can take place in that center within so many days of one of his cons. So that's why he does 3 or 4 a year to make sure nobody else can come in. So that's why Pittsburgh had to move to the David Lawrence Convention Center downtown, where you have to pay $20 a day to park, and then whatever the fee is to get inside the building just to walk around, and then there's no money to be spent on anybody in there. And then I did, there's a con in Altoona that I've done twice, and I've never sold a thing at because people there don't buy anything. Like I'm just like, I sit in the booth all day, and I have friends that go out to it and they do gangbusters, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And then there's the Three Rivers Con, which is run by the local, comic shops here, and I kind of got placed in no man's land the last time I did that, and I didn't do the second. I just didn't show up the second day. I was like, I'm not coming back because like people are just walking. They're trying to find back out to the main loop, so I'm not selling anything. Nobody's even looking over in my direction. The only people who have stopped by are friends of mine, so I can just talk to them online. So I don't do Pittsburgh cons anymore. It's just not worth it to me. It's unfortunate because it's local and I could be able to just drive from my house to there. The nice thing about the Elmira convention is my parents live in Elmira, and I can just stay with them and then go to wherever that's being held.
Yeah.
So that's the only cons I do. But the energy is undeniable. Like you get in there, you're like, oh, all these people are creating, and all these people want to do this thing, and I love all the people up there. That show and everything, and so it's a more fun show for me anyway. Even if I weren't to sell anything up there, I'd still get to see like you and Joe and Chris and all these guys up there. They're fantastic artists that I had no idea when I was growing up were so close to me.
Yeah, it's a little scary, the proximity of all of us, and then like we've said, so many of us who then ended up in Pittsburgh
we came here. Mm-hmm.
No, I think so. You and I got to be on a panel together once where I think the whole theme of the panel was just like, let's see how fast they can draw and get suggestions from the audience. But again, it was so fun, and it was a whole group of people that I really, really love. Like you said, they're incredible artists, and it's fun because while we are all similar in style, we're not the same in style. Like each of them has their own thing. So even though we're drawing the same thing, they turn out vastly different. And like that was so much fun. Like the audience was there, and that was super cool. But honestly, I was just having so much fun talking to the panel.
You almost don't even notice the audience is up there. They're the ones shouting out what you're gonna do, what you should do. And we're just all like, yeah, let's do this. Let's see who's gonna get done first. No, it's me. I'm gonna get done first because I know how to take out a lot.
Yep. It's such a neat thing, and exactly. And what I think is so cool then about having Doodle Crew and having it live on Twitch is we've got the chat. And while it's obviously not the same as people actually talking to us at shows, it's the same as like having someone come up to our booth and talk to us. And especially if you're sitting like we're essentially all boothed next to each other. So we get to all interact and talk to those people. And like, it's exactly that. It is the closest I can get to being at a convention without having situation this past
Yeah,
year.
especially at these times. Like, it's still not. And there's conventions that are opening up. I know there's one that's happening that just happened this past weekend here in town, or close to town at least. And I'm just like, really? Oh, I think it was one of the Steel City Cons, actually, because one of my friends was at it. He had a booth there. I'm just like, I don't know if we're ready for that yet. Like, I know that people are getting vaccinated, which is great, but there's still a lot of people out there that aren't and are like walking around as if they have. And it's just like, okay, I don't think we're ready for large groups of crowds yet. Well, at least I'm not.
No, and it's in a situation where, and I say it joking because that's how I deal with serious topics, but
Yeah.
I would always come home sick from weekends, either because I'm making money or I'm interacting with 5 to 10, 15,000 people. Like, I would come home with the con crud, and with that added bit of it, I was like, I can't risk it, because downside to being a freelancer, if I'm not actually working, I'm not making any money.
You're not making any money, right? Exactly. Yeah. If you don't.
Yeah, I'm not ready yet. Like, and it is nothing against what's going on. Like, I have one in September that I'm planning, but that's also, I'm planning it as an attendee so that I can wear my mask, I can be away from people as much as I need to, and I'm not in that same handing things back and forth to people. I can touch only what I want to touch, and
Right. Yeah. I have I don't even know when the first convention I'll do is, but I have a concert. It's on the 31st of August, and I'm still kind of like, but I've been waiting like 2 years to go to it, so it's like it's been canceled twice. So I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna go, and hopefully by the end of August, like we have, we're in a pretty good spot, because a lot of kids are gonna have to start getting vaccinated too, because I know a lot of we could get our oldest, and we're going to as soon as we have the time. So hopefully more and more people by that time will have gotten shots or boosters or whatever is even needed by then, and things will be a lot safer. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's fascinating and terrifying to me how much my world didn't actually change because I'm a work from home freelance artist.
Yep.
And at the same time, like, how weird it is and how much, I don't want to say trouble, but it's a jarring experience to be back out in the world. And I definitely not approaching it the same way that I did years ago.
No. Yeah, it's funny. Like, I mean, the only thing that really upended here was that the kids were all home instead of just the youngest, and so I had, we had to balance their school, which technically they only had like mornings. Really, it was like they got up in the morning and they had enough schoolwork to last them until about lunchtime, and then even when they did, and that was last year when they came back, like when they were ousted from school, is when the teachers were just like, here's the work you have to do, and let me know how things are going. And then this whole school year up until April, they were homeschooled, and but that was like they had live meets and stuff, but still they were done by lunchtime, and then for the rest of the day they were kind of free to go. And then so then when they went back, they were still done around 1 o'clock, so it's still like, okay, well, this is almost semi normal, so just me and our 4-year-old, but then the afternoon they come home. So it was a huge adjustment on the front of I had and my wife had a lot more responsibility during the daytime. It was more like the summers, but it was like for the whole year and year plus. But as far as work went, I actually saw an uptick in work, which I think is partially because a lot of places were like, oh, we're doing work from home, so I guess we can put these gigs down as remote because nobody can be in the office. So I was like, okay, great, I can benefit from that.
Yeah.
So I had most periods I had something going on, which was really good. And I think like after this week or next week, whenever I get the official, you're done, thumbs up from the clients, I'll actually have the first break that I've had in quite a while. So,
yay! Which is important.
It's great and terrifying because I don't know where the next one's coming.
Yeah, but you definitely, like, even with that deep-rooted love of art, there's still times like, no, you've got to recharge your batteries, and you've got time to to get different influences, and maybe just work on a fun project, or maybe just not do art for a little bit, and then
well, that's not possible because you know as well as I do that you're gonna sit there for like, maybe you'll take a day off and then you'll feel it in your hands. So you're like, I have to create. I'm getting an itch. I have to draw. It's what it feels like. It feels like it's like It's like restless leg syndrome, which I have when I sleep sometimes. I feel it from my elbows, like it's all through my forearms and into my hands. I'm like, I have to do something, and I get cranky if I don't, and everyone knows it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I have to get this energy out, and the only way I know how to do it is by putting stylus to screen or pencil to paper or pen to paper or whatever it is.
Yep.
I have to get some drawings out, and I'll sit on the phone. Like if I have a long phone call I have to make, I have to be drawing something because that's part of the way to get it out. Like I have two. It's the fidgety energy, and I had a fidget spinner around here somewhere. I can't find it, but even when I'm drawing, I'm spinning that thing in my left hand. So
it's too funny. No, the crankiness.
Mm-hmm.
Nail on the head for me. Like I will be around people and be like, "Why are you off today?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just mad about stuff." Like,
I haven't drawn.
And I have some friends who be like, "Have you drawn today?" And I'm just like,
Yeah.
"No, I haven't." I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, it's our strange addiction, but it makes sense.
It's the thing where, like, if you know someone's hangry, you're like, "Have you eaten anything? Have a Snickers." You're like, "You need to draw something. Draw something. You need to doodle. Have you doodled today? You didn't doodle.
I didn't doodle today."
We can tell."
And again, coming back to Doodle Crew, it was why, because it's like, nope, this is gonna force me to do art even when I'm overwhelmed and pushing it off. Like, and it's so funny because it's not a lack of desire. It was just sometimes I feel like I don't have the time for it. And I was like, no, you're literally going to budget a 4-hour block of time to do this and nothing else. And I was like, okay.
Yep. No, it's a great idea to like make sure that you're sitting down and doing something. Like I have to have this chunk of time so that I can do that. And that's for me, like I'm guaranteed that time, like after 10 o'clock at night, usually into the early mornings. But, you know, other than that, I mean, I make sure that I come down usually in the afternoons, like between 2 and 4. Because usually the kids are pretty good at that point in time to like kind of do their own thing for a little bit. Like, so I know I can come down and I can either crank some stuff out for work or I can, you know, start to work on something for myself or something. So,
yeah. So talking about that, I know you've mentioned, obviously you work digitally. You've also mentioned the paper. Is there a specific medium that you really, really love?
I do really kind of love drawing digitally. It's that you find the right settings or you find the right program, you find the right brushes, and it's awesome. Like digitally inking is my jam. Like that's what I love to do. Like I love to sketch and stuff and stuff like that. But when I'm like I've gotten to the point now where my roughs are rough. Like people would look at them and be like, what am I looking at? And I have turned in stuff like that to clients that I've worked with before. So they know what my finished work looks like. So I can be like, let me send you some roughs of these. Like right now I'm working on a coloring book for a client. I'm like, let me send you, my roughs for these pages. And I know that I could have polished these things better so that they could see it better. But they're like, yeah, no, that looks great. We know what you're going to turn out. Like, can't wait to see the finished.
Yeah.
And then so I'm just like, okay, good. Because I end up pushing my poses more in the inking. I end up pushing my facial expressions more in the inking phase just because it's more fun for me to do it that way. And a lot of the times before you're really polishing this sketch and there's that life, right? The life is in that sketch. And then you go to ink it and you're taking your time to do that. And you lose something. Like it's some of that life is gone.
Yeah.
So for me, keeping my rough super rough, I'm not getting that form yet. Like that form's not like, it's just, I have a circle for a head. I have some, cylinders or shapes for the arms and stuff where everything's supposed to go. Let's see where we can push this with the inking. And so like, I do real sweeping, like when I'm doing my inks, like I'm inking from the elbow. Like it's not so much like just like this, I'm really, really kind of doing, these swooping lines and stuff. And I use Clip Studio Paint and I use brushes from Friendin pretty much exclusively. And I use that vector eraser tool as my savior because I overlap my lines horribly and I just throw, boop, it's gone, boop, it's gone. There's the intersection, we're awesome, right? So like that's kind of it's not really a crutch, it's like the tool that I use, knowing that I can get these lines and stuff. And once I started doing that, I started getting comments from people like, man, those lines are so clean and they're so, they're the thick to thin is really great. I'm like, these are the brushes I use. I don't fidget with my inks really. I'll redraw a line 82 times before I get the right one. but it's so fast that like, you know, it's like, nope.
Yep.
There
Control
it is.
line. Control Z, line. Control Z.
I have a button. My button here on my Cintiq is Control Z. So my fingers here, draw, hit it, draw, hit it, draw, hit it. Okay, that's good. Erase. There we go. Like, that's the only button that I will reset up on my Cintiq, because the drivers for Wacom Cintiqs are terrible drivers, and it'll drop just out of nowhere. I'll be in the middle of drawing a picture, and all of a sudden my pressure sensitivity is gone, so I have to uninstall, reinstall. The only thing I do is I fix my buttons on my stylus. I have right click and undo, or right click and delete.
Yep.
And that's it. I don't flip around. I don't use the eraser end. It's all this, and my finger stays right on these buttons. And then I reset this one to Control Z, and that's it. Like I can't, like, I know keyboard shortcuts for half the programs that I use. My keyboard's right here. I can hit Control S every 10-15 minutes or so that I remember to do it, and like whatever else I need to do, like all the F keys, F5 through F8 for Flash or my symbol keys and stuff, and that's all I really need. So like I don't take the time to set up the other, 7 buttons on my Cintiq, and plus I think I have the zoom up here or something. I don't know. I don't use them.
No, that's a great point though, and I think there's a cool thing as I've talked to people more recently. A lot of the comics that I create, I know a lot of the stuff you do, you're kind of the sole person on it. Like, you might be handing up at a certain point, but there's that really cool visual shorthand that you can leave for yourself where you're like, no, I need to clean up and tighten this sketch because I'm not handing this off to someone else to ink. If I was, and we either didn't work together a lot, like I always think of Tim Townsend and Chris Bocciolo, who like worked together so much where it was just like, you can see their separate art, but together it just fits perfectly. But that's, 1 in a million. You just happen to get a really great match of a great penciler with a great inker that just complements. So being able to just leave little shorthands for yourself and then go in, and it's exactly like, I can't tell you the number of times where I would have a sketch and I would just feel like as soon as my inks were done, I had pulled all the life out of it, and it just looked stale then. And it's heartbreaking because you liked the sketch so much.
Yep. Like, oh, I can't wait to see what the final version of this looks like. What happened?
What did you do?
I hate this and myself.
Yes. I'm
a terrible artist. This is the worst thing I've ever drawn.
Everything. Yeah, can't relate at all. Speaking of that and being hard on ourselves, what's a medium that scares you or intimidates you?
Paints. Like anything that's so permanent, like when you put it down, which is kind of ironic because I paint miniatures, which you can kind of see over my shoulder here. And that doesn't scare me, but painting on canvas does. I've had friends that like I had a friend a few years back, like she had bought this cabinet type thing to go over a garbage can, and she wanted me to paint a tree on the front of it. And I was like, I don't paint. And she's like, well, I don't know any other artists. I was like, okay. So I did it, and it turned out pretty decent. But like the thing with paints is, and it's, I learned more and more. It's like it's not just like one, like you don't just paint a tree and you paint the background. And there's so many layers, and it's something that you almost have to go to an art museum and see like the masters paints and stuff, like how thick that paint is on that canvas, and like how layered up everything is, or how not perfect it is up close.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm trying to learn. Is like you don't have to have something be absolutely, pristine, and it's not all going to be done on one layer. Like you're going to do a base and a highlight and a shadow, and then go over all of that like so many times to get that right texture, that right thing. But painting to me is like people who can do it. I'm like, geez, you're another creature altogether.
Yeah.
And even people that do it digitally too. Like if you like the painterly styles digitally, I'm like, I don't get it. Like I self shade everything because animation is my background and that's my passion and all that stuff. So all my stuff is like comic book colored at best. Flat color at worst. But like it's like you guys who digitally paint and make the stuff look realistic or make it look like a painting. You guys are just out of this world.
Yeah. No. Again, flat out sourcing. I'm just like, I don't get it. Like, and they're like, but you do digital art. I'm like, yes, I understand how it was done. Just like I understand that you hold a paintbrush and you put paint on it and then you do it. I get it as a concept. I just can't make my brain talk to my hand to do that.
Yeah.
It's not a transferable skill like that. And especially, I always think of like old school, like Renaissance ones, like anytime where you were painting something photorealistic before photos were a thing. Like, can't do it.
Days too, and it took them months or whatever to create one painting, and it's days upon days upon days of staring at the same thing, and sometimes you only have that light for so long.
Yep.
So you're painting for that light, and then what do then you're like, okay, I'm done for today. I got to move on to something else, and maybe I'll sculpt something over here, which sculpture to me is a lot easier because that's another thing where like my 3D skills kind of help out a lot. And we had to sculpt in school. Like we had to sculpt a whole bust where half the head was the skull and the bones, and then the other half was like the muscle, and then part of it was muscle, and then the very 1/4 of it you put the skin over top of it, and so that was one of my first classes at the Art Institute. I think that was my intro to art class, like one of the very first classes we ever took, and it was the most monotone, boring voice guy ever, and it was 8 o'clock in the morning class, and he would show videos. He would show videos all the time, so the lights would go off, and then you'd hear thump, 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 the people's heads just going down.
Yep. Oh my gosh.
It's just like, oh man, what are you doing?
You can't do that to us. Like, and it's so funny because I'll tell people about that because it was the same with us. Like, you would get in there, 8 a.m. class, we're gonna do a projector up on there and turn it off.
Don't do that.
Sitting in a computer chair, I'm like, I cannot stay awake, and there's still 3 more hours of class.
Yeah, it's 4 hours of every once in a while the lights would go on, be like, go take a break. You're like, oh, what? A break from what? I don't know. I got into that, like my art history 2 class, I had to have a large cappuccino with me, or else I wasn't going to make it through that 4-hour class of them rambling on about, and I understand that they're the masters and that's what, that's great and everything. But at the same time, like, this is probably not going to come up again in my life or during my career.
Yeah.
It's like high school math. They're like, when am I going to use this in real life? You're like, you're not. I don't have to know the sine of this or the cosine of that. I never have to do that unless I'm helping my kids with math, and math is so different now that doesn't matter.
Yep.
What I learned is wrong.
Yep. Again, education, whole separate thing. But also, like, I liked for the tech art part of our class. Like, if half of our class was lecture, and then you had another 2 hours to actually work and apply the stuff that they taught you. That was great. 4 hours of a just flat out lecture. I'm like, I'm full. After 2 hours, I've absorbed as much information as I can possibly absorb in this setting. Nothing. There's nothing else getting in there because I can't. Like, you've already hit so much.
Yep.
So, yeah. Again, odd choice on their institute's school system, but yeah.
They had to do it. So
they had to do it. So almost done wrapping up. But how do you work through if you are in an art slump or if something is bringing you down? You're not feeling like making art.
When you have a limited amount of time to actually be able to work and do stuff like I do right now, I don't get the luxury of an art slump, and they happen. Like it's just like anything else. Like I have sat down where I've tried to do something personally, and it's just not happening, right? Like you have days where, oh, I've forgotten how to draw. I can't even draw a ball today. That's not a ball shape. I can't draw that today. You kind of have to just, like, if you're working on a project that has a deadline, you don't have that luxury. You push through it, and 9 times out of 10, you can do that. You can actually just keep drawing. Your muscles will remember. If you've done it enough, your muscles will remember how to draw this, that, or the other thing. If I can't do the thing I'm supposed to, like, I just finished up a series of about 50 technical illustrations for an electronic. So it's like a lot of like electrical antennas and relays and how this relay bounces off this. It's very technical. It has to be, very whatever. If I can't get that out right away, I'll go to what I know. I can draw people. I can draw characters. Let me start drawing some cartoon characters here to get myself going. And then I've gotten into a habit of taking, like, I know the first 45 minutes of when I sit down to do something is going to be warm-up time. It's to get my mind into it. It's to do whatever. So I will sit down, I'll put some music on, or I'll throw something on the TV that's I've seen 82,000 times, so I don't have to sit and stare at it.
Yep.
Or pay attention to it. It's just background, whatever. It helps to distract from that voice back there going, you can't do this. Give up. What are you doing? Just go take a nap.
Yep.
So I'll push myself to do, like, once I'll be like, oh great, I've got this warm-up thing, and I'll save what I've done for sometimes I like what I've done for a warm-up so much that I turn it into a piece. Like, I'll turn that into something, but it'll take 2 weeks for me to finish, because 45 minutes to an hour I'm working on that. Push it to the side. It's time to get on to the paying work. And I'll by that time my hands and my arm and my brain are all kind of working together again, and I can get back into what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So that you kind of have to, whatever helps distract from that disconnect in your brain telling you can't do it, or you're getting frustrated, you put on something to help distract you, or you kind of just go, okay, I know I can do this. Let me do this.
Yeah. No, I really like what you said, and I think it's something that we forget, again, when you talk about having a limited amount of time, allowing yourself the grace and allowing yourself that little warm-up period. Like,
yeah.
I mean, not so much now because cars are a lot smarter, but back in the old days, like, you needed to let your car warm up in the winter because it was ready to go. And I know for me, I still fight with, like, there's an expectation in my brain that as soon as I sit down, it's got to start coming. Like, you just got to start pumping out art right there. And that's not always the case. And I will find in that first moment, if I allow myself to be distracted and pop over to Instagram or pop over to Pinterest or something,
sure,
I will lose more time than if I had just been like, just sit and sketch something. Because then, like you said, once I'm up and running, then I can crack through other things. And yeah,
but I mean, I think we all fall into that distraction though. Like, we're like, okay, well, I mean, I'm going to click over here and see. Then next thing you know, 10, 15 minutes have gone by. You've just been doing scroll, or scroll, however you're looking at, whatever you're looking at. And you're just like, oh, I could have been being productive instead of just, getting myself more and more angry because I'm reading people being angry.
Yeah, I'm not getting good stimulus. I'm just getting it worse.
And I'm mad at Instagram because it's not chronological, and I'm not seeing all my people that I'm following stuff. I'm seeing the same 4 or 5 pictures over and over again from the same, 2 or 3 people. It's like, what? I know I'm following 1,000 some people. I'm seeing 20 of the same picture, and when I get to the end of it, they're like, oh, you're all caught up. Here's some people you don't even follow. I'm like, I'm mad at you. Why am I doing this to myself?
I think that sentence sums it up so well. I'm mad at you. Why am I doing this to myself?
But I still do.
I still do it. Yeah. No, we're weird creatures of habit. And again, I am so grateful. I so appreciate you coming and joining Doodle Crew and hanging out, because it can feel so isolating. And even just having somebody else validate that very weird specific instance and experience that we have, like, it helps. It helps to be like, that's right. Okay, we are crazy, but we're all crazy together.
yeah, I'm not alone in feeling this way. That's fantastic. Yeah, we're all miserable.
We're all miserable together. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Geoff, this has been so awesome. Thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me. I got to hear new stories too.
Yeah, it's been a ton of fun. Yeah, it's always fun sharing. I love telling that the first meeting of my wife's story, because it's hilarious. Because we didn't technically like meet for a couple weeks after that, when she came by the house again with her friend to talk to my roommate again, and that's when we actually met. But it's like, it's so funny to just be like, we actually met before that, and
I wasn't all.
It's about the only memory I have of that 48-hour period, that and what I've been working on. So,
that's so awesome. So, hey, if people want to find more of your art, support you, where can they find you, follow you, and show you some love?
If you want to just kind of look at my work, you can go to geoffmunn.com, GeoffMunn.com. That's my portfolio website, which I need to kind of update a little bit again. It's been a few months since I've done that. My Instagram, I post there a few times a week. Should probably post more often, but that's at Geoff Munn, I believe. And I'm on Twitter where I kind of post nonsense, and that's at gmunny, Gmunny. I'm on Facebook, but I don't. Anything that gets posted there usually is through Instagram.
Yeah.
And I think that's about it. Oh, I have a Patreon where I do post exclusive comics. If you like hashtag parenting at all, which everybody gets to see, but my patrons get to see a day or two ahead of time and at high res, so they could actually download it, print it out if they like it enough. So that's patreon.com/pocket science, POCKETSCIENCE.
That's awesome.
And if you like violent fantasy adventure comics, I have one on there called Giant Bastard, and you'll only see that on Patreon until it's done, and I can print it out.
That's awesome. No, you're awesome. I love your stuff. I enjoy hanging out and creating art with you. So yeah.
Thank you. And I'm super grateful for you having me on Doodle Crew. I wish I could do it more often, but with circumstances being what they are, hopefully after the break that we can get back into doing it and we can do it more often.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you.